One, two, and welcome back. This is problem 2 of the Workbook of Fun. Hopefully you had as much fun doing it as our Sigma Chi group, Grace, Jack, and Matt. I know after we talked after the first problem, they were essentially giddy over the opportunity to work on these problems. And so now we move into problem 2, and that's cost, volume, profit. We spent a lot of time on that early, and that's clearly a first exam problem or set of problems. But be specific and recognize that we've got to be specific about the items we're after, because there's a lot of different tools, but we're only focused on a couple of things here, and that'll make your life a lot easier. And so Grace had asked me earlier about the idea that, will it be just kind of like the same things we had to do on the first exam? And the answer is yes. I tried to be as straightforward with you for that exam, and I'm not going to throw new things in this exam. Well, except for new material we're covering. But other than that, any comprehensive stuff will be very specific, okay? So at this point, Jack's gonna help us out here. And one of the things that we know, Jack, is you're given some information, right? So of the information we've got, which is given?
So the volume is at 20,000.
Okay.
Your total sales are at $500,000.
Okay.
The contribution margin per unit price is $5.
Okay.
The taxable income before tax income is at 30,000.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
And that's pretty much good enough. I mean, because we had talked at one time about taxes. Okay, now be aware that even though we talked about it, I took it off of that first exam. So from here down, you don't have to worry about this. So the focus is getting down to the 30,000. So Jack, help me get through this first part. Okay, so how am I going to get my sale price? Again, our famous thing is 2 of the 3. All right, so I need 2 of 3. Go ahead.
So you're given the $20,000, not 20,000 unit volume,
okay,
and $500,000.
Okay.
20,000 times 25 is 500,000. So
yeah. So if I take that 500 and divide it by that 20,000, I know that I get $25 for a sale price. Again, don't forget, this is sale price, not to be confused with variable expenses per unit, okay? So make sure you remember that, all right? And so once I know that, what's the next number I can get?
So you're given the contribution margin per unit is $5. And
okay, got that.
You know, sales per unit minus variable expenses per unit equals.
Okay, so again, 2 of the 3. So this has to be 20.
Yep.
Okay. And so once I know these per unit, remember it's the 20,000 times the 20, and that'll give me the 400. And then the same thing, right, Jack?
Yep.
I just take the 20,000 times the 5, and that should give me 100. Or what's the other way I could do this? Just the straight subtraction, right? So there's almost always 2 ways to do this, but remember, to do one of these, you need 2 of the 3 in combination, okay? So that's how we would do the top half. That's how we do the top half. And so if I come in here and fill this in so people can actually see it, that's the way we set it up. Now, Matt, one of the things that people always come back and ask, and we've been through this a few times, and especially when we started doing work on divisional income statements and segment income statements, we had to be able to calculate the contribution margin percentage, okay? And so how are we going to calculate that? Do you recall?
You just take the contribution margin. You can either take the total or the per unit and divide it by the corresponding sales, like either the per unit sales or the total sales.
So Matt just said something really, really important. I can calculate that contribution margin percentage at either the per unit level or the total level because they're in the same proportions. They're in the same proportions. So if I took the 5 divided by the 25, I would get 20%. If I took the 100 divided by the 500, I would also get 20%. Okay, so my contribution margin percentage is 20%. Matt, do you remember the little story I tell about it? What does it mean? Out of every dollar, I get 20 cents in contribution margin, right? Because I've got to cover those variable expenses first. And so that's what's left. That 20% is what's left to first cover my fixed expenses and then go to profitability. Okay, so that's why that 20% is important. And so at that point, we probably, let me clean some of this off. At that point, we can probably come in here and figure out our fixed expenses, right? Because again, you know, 2 of the 3. So how much is that going to be?
70,000.
70,000. So at that point, he's finished his income statement and he's ready to go into break even and then into target profit. And so let's go ahead and go down to break even because we will. I will make sure that that's on your exam. So this is, as I like to say, this is highly testable material. Okay. Hashtag HTM. So I understand it's trending in 2 weeks. So that's the strategy we have. So you remember break even is, do you remember how to calculate it?
Yes, sir.
What do you got, Matt? Any idea?
So
If not, I know.
Take your fixed expenses. And you divide it by isn't the per unit contribution?
Yeah. So I can divide by $5, and then that's going to give me 14,000. Now, what does that mean? It means that to break even or to get this number right here to 0, all I have to do is sell 14,000 instead of the 20,000. So that's at break even. And so all we're doing is saying, okay, if I get $5 per unit, and this is my fixed expenses are 70 at break even, I know this number has to be 0. So this has to be 70, and I can back into this of 14,000. Okay. Now, the other way to go is we could say, I still have the 70, but we can also do this with contribution margin percentage, right? So I've got a 20% margin. And so this comes in at $350,000. So I can get it in units or I can get it in sales dollars. The other piece though to remember is if I take the 14,000 times the $25 sale price, I get the same thing. Okay. So there's a variety of different ways to get there, but that's basically the piece. And remember that what we're trying to accomplish here is get you started in your final exam review. And so I did not tell anybody what they were going to look at today. They're just trying to dig back into the memory banks and see what's there right now. And we're trying to give you some indication of maybe some of the ways you can start polishing up to get ready for your final exam. And so, Grace, we're going to come down and look at margin of safety. Oh, wait, we're not, because it's not on the exam. So sorry, Grace, if that was your go-to problem.
That's okay.
Too bad. But right now we've got to do, we're going to do target profit. Okay. Now, remember, again, you won't have to worry about before tax or after tax target profit. It's always going to be before tax. Okay. So you're not going to have to worry about tax effects. Now, the one piece of information that you now have from the problem itself is it tells you that I need a target profit of $110,000. Okay. So once I know that piece, I'm trying to figure out how many units do I need to sell, or what's my total sales need to be to generate that kind of profit. Okay. So at that point, Grace, what other pieces of information do we have from the work that Matt did up here for us before? So if this is what we had, if this is what we had before, what of that carries forward to this income statement?
We need the total fixed expenses,
Okay, so we got 70 here.
and then also the CM per unit, or we have the CM percentage too. We could use that.
So the 5 is still good. The 20% is still good. And that's really all you need, right? I mean, the 25 and the 20 are still good as well. But as Grace points out, all you really need is going to be that 5 and that 70, okay, to be able to do this. And so if we go down to look at the calculations, well, let's just crank them out by hand real quick. So if I'm going to do these real quick, what I have to remember is if I'm going to get sales for a specific target profit, I got to cover my fixed expenses, and I've got to generate a target profit. And this is why Grace said it's important to know this $5, because if I take that and divide by the $5, this is 70, and this is 110. She knows then that the volume has to be 36,000. Has to be 36,000. So if I put the 36,000 in here, and I know this is 25 because I knew it up above, my sales have to be 900,000 to get there. So Grace, then take me through the other option that Matt was talking about earlier with the contribution margin percentage.
So you could also do the fixed expenses, so the 70,000 plus the target profit, so 110,000 over that 20%.
Yep.
And then that would give you your the sales and sales dollars.
And that also gives me the $900,000 in sales. Okay. And so those are the pieces of the CVP, cost volume profit, that you're going to have to stay focused on. Don't forget that you're going to need to be able to do this little table. You got to be able to calculate break even, and then you've got to be able to come over here and hit target profit. So I'll have to give you that before tax target profit. If you had any questions about operating leverage, keep it to yourself. I'll be glad to talk to you if you really want to know more about operating leverage, but you probably have other things to do regardless of how bored you are. So any questions, you three? Anything? All right. Well, I certainly have to thank Grace, Jack, and Matt for being willing to jump in here and give this a try. I look forward to doing the rest of these with different groups from class. You guys have been great. But for now, please go away. Thank you for playing.